Hello, folks. I just wanted to offer you a demo of sorts for the novel Starchild Primordial Reborn. I just have two small excerpts here that's kind of going to show you the tone in which the book takes, because there's some strange contrasting tones. One is very comedic, one follows the life of a young protagonist, and then the other one is very abstract and can be quite distant. So I'm just going to throw us through two examples of those, starting off with the really abstract and the deeper parts of the novel, and then that'll be followed by some of the more comedic and easier going segments to kind of give you an idea and tone of the book. Here we go. Derek. The voice was sweet. It lacked the cold, sharp tones of the monsters that lurked in the recesses of the mind. It was spoken with a human tongue that was not biparted into the slithering monstrosity of orchestrated horror. It was cast from the warming lips of a beautiful soul, a spirit that did not dream of the days where it would feed endlessly off the radical emotions of man. It was human, and it sounded beautiful. It felt like forever since I could hear that voice, since I could see into the world of man. I had grown so familiar with the cold darkness of the imagination that I nearly had forgotten there was life in this world. It was almost as though I had aged through many generations, confined and restricted to the idea of captivity. That the influential and condemning negativity had told me insanity was but the best remedy to my ailment, that it was the solution to my loneliness. The mother, the world, the looming terror was not there to accompany me in my time of outcast. It was lost. It had been severed by a miraculous force that was beyond my comprehension, but having been left in that solitude had me forget that very person I once had been, so long ago. That voice changed it all, and in that very moment I had remembered who I was. That I was a child, an innocence of man, and how I was the love of somebody's life. It would have been wrong for me to leave its cries unanswered, and for me to fall back into the self-dwelling depths of my own envisioning. I was obliged to hear its voice, and I reached into the body that I had once occupied long ago. It was cold and lifeless, like an old abandoned vehicle left on the rain-soaked side road that led off to nowhere. It would take time to warm up, to return it to life, and I was willing to give it the time that it was needed. As I left and embraced the reality around me, I looked at the life that held my body in its hands. She was my kin, a blood of mine, my sister. She appeared frozen in time, or perhaps lived in a passage where time flowed at a rate slower than the third eye could understand. On her lips was a paused apology that would be spoken endlessly until my return. Her eyes reflected in the tears it cried, showing the remorse of having placed a loved one in the reaches of a terrible predator. Her fingers caressed the side of my empty face, while her other palm held the small form of my hand in its fevered grasp, refusing to let go. Her fingers were woven in between mine, and where everything in this world had remained still, the gems in the ring upon her fingers flickered in resonance. As the ring was pressured between my fingers, the gift of silence was passed on, and for the first time in my life, I was freed by the influence of the Primordians. Alright, so this next segment is different. It's not following after that one, and this kind of relays a little bit more of the comedic and more innocent aspect of the book. That's the more relaxing parts, I would say, to read. Here we go. I settled snugly into my secured seat before looking off to my sides in mysterious wonder. When things looked still and fine, I threw a shoulder into Dylan. "Move over," I shouted. "I can't. I'm almost out the window," Dylan shouted back. We were laughing as we kicked and shoved in a playful manner before Grover, the bus driver, began yelling out post-nom emergency codes over the bus's PA system. Nobody knew what he was saying, but the bus was picking up speed, and each turn in the road caused kids to launch out of their seats into the middle aisle as their backpacks were flung like rocket-propelled projectiles. "Landmines coming!" Grover yelled, as the back of the bus was thrown into the air from the potholes in the road, and the kids in the center aisles were all tossed into the air at once, before coming back down hard onto the pile of school bags that were scattered about. This was probably my favorite part of having to go to school every day. I always could rely on old Grover to take a detour that would put the bus through an axle-bending, shock-impacting, and tire-popping adventure that would exhaust the onboard students at the same rate the gas tank was leaking fuel. After throwing Dylan's rolling body off of me, I climbed back onto the seat quickly and clasped into the bottom cushion. Waiting for the next turn, bump, or barrel roll, the bus would undergo. The tension was thrilling, and being at the back of the bus, I had no clear view of the front window, or what was to come for that matter. "Clear skies from here, boys," shouted Grover, looking back over his shoulder for a second to see how many of its occupants were still alive. All the students on board let out a group sigh as kids slowly climbed from the ground and back into the stiff-leathered seats. I let go of the grip I had on the bar below my seat and looked over to Dylan, who was busy staring out of the corner of his eyes at a student a few seats across from us. Without even following his eyes, I knew exactly who it was he was looking at. "You think he's mad that we're still in his seat?" Dylan asked as he kept his eyes locked on the 8th grader, a few seats ahead. "Whatever. It's our seat now," I responded. I couldn't find any dread or anger from the school fight that landed me in a week's suspension, but I assumed it was there. I didn't linger long in the unusual tranquil mind of the bully. Dylan's attention averted elsewhere, and he reached into his pocket to pull out a piece of paper that was folded into numerous squares. It was the class schedule that we were issued on the first day of school, and instead of committing it to memory, like every grade A student, we carried them around with us for what will probably be the entire year. "Here, let me see yours," Dylan asked. Unlike Dylan's neatly folded schedule, I produced a crumpled ball of paper from the bottom pits of my pocket, complete with torn corners and tattered edges that nearly ripped in half as I tried unfolding it. I threw it onto his lap before I degraded its condition even further, and watched as he held both sheets side by side, observing them intently. "Oh!" Dylan exclaimed. "We have gym together!" The two of us jumped out of our seats with excitement and threw out brimming high fives just as the bus came to a halting stop, and our bodies lunged into the seat before us. "Get your jabbing, goddammit hind tushies off my deck, pronto!" Grover shouted over the back of the bus as he kicked the door lever with his foot and waved his hand in a frantic evacuative gesture towards the parting doors. It was time for school.